Okay. We'll get past the candles here in a minute. We'll start the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, are we all set?
That's so cool. I got this for you.
I got one already.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the regular Monday meeting, Monday, December 9th, 2024. Calling the meeting to order at 6:33. Roll call, please, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here?
Mayor Infante.
Here.
Thank you.
Mayor-elect David Silva, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? It's Buellton, Mayor-elect. Ready? Begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have no proclamations, presentations. This is the time for public communications on non-agenda and consent items. I have one public comment at this time. I have another one, I think, on 3, yes, good. All right, let's start with Mr. Al Cortese, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Mayor-elect. And congratulations to all of you who were reelected. But you need to excuse me tonight because I want to express my personal frustration, which I know to be shared by many more of your constituents. That frustration is with the City Council and its staff regarding the total failure to deal with a legal issue that is dispositive of the many problems presented by the Site C development. This issue is that the development application is void, according to the California Code, and therefore must not be processed by the staff. This issue was first brought to your attention by our council's letter to the city attorney dated March 22, 2024, in an email dated April 1 to the mayor and staff. And over the course of the following 8 months, we have reiterated many times the need for the council to deal in a timely fashion with this issue, but have never received a substantive answer to that issue. However, the law is clear. And the very builder's remedy law on which the developer relies requires, and I quote, consent from the property owner to submit the application. And the property owner affidavit requires the owner of each property involved to provide their signature, acknowledging that, quote, the application is being filed with their knowledge. Further, the property owner affidavit states, if the property is owned by more than one individual, signatures are required of all owners. Developer claims he's making an appropriate use of an easement. That's an issue for another day. That's not our issue. What is undisputed, however, is that the developer is not the owner of the property underlying the easement, and that he does not have consent to file the application or the signatures that are required of all owners. Forgive me, but candidly, we're tired of getting the brush off and the runaround. If you fail to take action, you force your constituents to bring action against you before it's too late. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lansing Duncan, I believe I got you in here next.
Thank you, Mayor Infante, for the last time. And congratulations to Mayor Brown and council members Infante, and Arona. I hope as you shift around in your seats, that means you're going to shift around with your approach to this issue. Because to tell you the truth, it isn't working to roll over and play dead. Solvang is being scammed. We have a project which is really going to affect the city using twice as much land, building twice as many units on a highly visible gateway project that's going to seriously impact an intersection that we all rely upon to get to the hospital and to Los Olivos or Ballard or even north to Santa Maria. And what you've done so far has done nothing to address this issue when property owners pointed out that, as Al pointed out, you have an application that didn't meet the statutory requirements of the application. What you had originally was a proposal which was going to provide you with 20 affordable units, and now you have a proposal that's only going to provide you with 13 affordable units. Now, I know you're just saying that somebody else is dictating this, but it seems to me that you're just abdicating the public planning powers that the city has by letting other people do this for you. And we pointed out that that's not necessary. So we hope going forward, you'll think more carefully about what you can do to make Solvang a better place and to bring the powers of planning back into your own hands. That's what you're supposed to do. And because basically playing possum isn't working. The applicant has now submitted a project that still is incomplete because he's failed to provide the title information regarding those property owners. That needs to be asked for once again. And the applicant needs to be told he still has an incomplete project. Thank you.
Thank you, Lansing. That's the only slips I have at this time. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to talk? Mr. Martin, you're up.
Mr. Mayor and Mayor-elect and members of the council, I would like to speak eventually at the agenda item on the zoning statutes that you've been asked to approve, but I will hold off on that. What I'd like to say now is I certainly second what has just been commented by the last two speakers. You know, I get the sense sometimes that this is an adversarial matter between the city government and the citizens, and it's not. You all should be happy that we're here talking to you and that we'll continue to talk to you from now on. You have concerned citizens who have put in hundreds, maybe collectively thousands of hours to help you and help our staff. And we get the feeling that you'd rather not hear from us. And I think that's really too bad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have anybody else in-house that would like to speak? Do we have anybody online? I don't see anybody. Okay, in that case, we will close public communications for non-agenda and consent items, and we're up for the city manager's report, please.
Good evening. I have a couple of things. One of them is that the tree burn, the kind of the culmination and finale of our Yulefest celebration. I was listening on Friday night. It was originally scheduled for January 10th, which is second Friday. You know, the Yulefest ends on the 5th, the Sunday, and we're going to do it on the 10th. However, we've since found out that the mission is starting a retrofit project, and that area will not be available to us. We're going to move the tree burn to January 3rd. So it's moving up a full week. Just want to make sure. We posted that on our announcements, et cetera. But some of the printed material that's out there says January 10th, and it has been changed to January 3rd. And we'll make this announcement again at my second bite at the city manager's comment later. I also have an email from Lauren Bianchi Clemon, yeah, from SBCAG, Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, reminding everyone that there is still an opportunity to provide input on unmet transit needs. This information is available on how to make those comments on our website and I believe also Facebook. And there is a meeting on December 11th, which is Wednesday evening from 4 to 6 p.m. and it can be attended remotely. Also in person if you're so inclined. But that information is available again on our website. Just want to make sure everybody knew about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions of the staff report? Anybody? No? All right, so we have, in this case, Section 5, we're looking for any report out from any of the council members of what's been going on. What are you doing? No? Speak. Turn your microphone on, though.
I want to thank our Parks and Recreation Department for the parade. It was a well-attended event. The tree lighting was also a perfect event for the evening. Somebody made the comment if we could have big screen monitors, the people in the back could see something. So if that's positive feedback, I don't know. And the crossing guards, I thought they were very helpful along Alice Hall. I think we could even use them in a few other places, but I saw them on Alice Hall and they did a great job. That's what I had.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, just wanted to also thank the staff for the parade event, which is, I think, not only well attended and fun, but well organized. So thank you. I did want to mention that on Friday, Dave Brown and I both attended. I attended remotely, but attended the Valley-wide 3 EMA, WMA, and Eastern Management Association Joint Powers Agreement committee meeting and voted in some major decisions related to annual plans and the way we would spend some of that grant money. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend in person, but did over the Zoom call. That's it.
And thank you. And I want to say thank you to the staff actually for the Friday night and Saturday. Friday night at the tree lighting ceremony was really great, where we learned to say Juli Fest. There was a big point of that at the lighting, and the Saturday Julefest parade was quite spectacular. We did a lot and got a lot of things done, and our Parks and Rec people just spent a tremendous amount of time on that. I know a whole bunch of people were involved, so I wanted to say thank you to them. Okay, pardon me. Let's move on to item number 6, consent items. Now, we've got no public comment on this because we did that previously in the general section. Would you present that to us, please, Ms. Clerk?
Consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved by one motion. These items are discussed only in request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during the public communications portion of this agenda.
Thank you. Do we have any council comments? Anything you want to pull, or can we have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda items as posted.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona?
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Rona?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Mayor Infante?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, Murphy. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, no, I'm not, I don't want that job,
mind.
thanks. I just want to point out, you're accepting and approving the consent calendar also enacts the TOT ordinance that will be effective on January 1st. It could have been effective 10 days from now. You want to comment on that at all? Well, I guess it is effective, but it
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
take
just going to
effect.
clarify it.
Right, yeah, thank you.
It will be effective 10 days from now, but implementation is going to be delayed.
Until January 1st.
Okay.
Do
So-
litigation?
Instead of doing it in the middle of the month
okay.
and all that, it just gets
You're just pushing it out to the first of the year.
Right.
Yeah, that just for ease of compliance, so that, it's going to take time to get notices out to the hotels and, have everybody update the form, city update the forms and all that. So the ordinance is effective, that will be the 19th of December, but it's up to the city to implement it. So they've just, made the decision to roll back implementation a little bit to give people time.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we have nothing under public hearings. Let's move to item number 8, discussion items. 8A, who, are you going to present that to us, Madam Clerk?
Discussion and possible action to adopt by title only. Ordinance number 24-377, creating the Village Design District Overlay Zone. DD-1, rezoning the Tourist Commercial TRC Zone to Village Mixed Use VMU. Rezoning the Institutional I Zone to Public Institutional PI. Rezoning APN 139-300-001 Creekside Open Space from Recreational Rec to Open Space OS, rezoning APN 139-181-014 Solvang Park from Recreational REC to Parks P, rezoning APN 139-181-061 parking lot across from Solvang Park, APN 139-173-018 parking lot between Mission Street and Copenhagen Drive, APN 139-174-040 and APN 139-174-042 Oak Street parking lot, and APN 139-191-008 Annex Building from Tourist Commercial TRC to Public Institutional PI, and amending the official zoning map and Title 11 zoning ordinance of the Solvang Municipal Code to reflect the same, for second reading. Also, to adopt by title only, Ordinance 24-376, rezoning APN 137-290-013, 012, 022, 024, 029, and 137-310-001 from Recreational REC to Open Space OS, and amend the official zoning map of the City of Solvang to reflect the same for second reading. And to adopt by title only, Ordinance 24-378 of the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, repealing and replacing Title 11 zoning regulations of the Solvang Municipal Code and the official zoning map of the City of Solvang for second reading.
Staff report. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to make one comment before Mr. Castillo gets into his staff report. Even though these are listed as one item under 8A, we will be taking 3 separate votes, so 1 vote per ordinance. And we will do, when it comes to it, we'll do ordinance number 24-377 first, then 376, and then 378.
Thank you. Everybody get that twisting around?
I can repeat it later, but just wanted to preview.
Staff report, please, Raphael.
So I'll be very brief with my report tonight. So the bulk of the information is contained in your staff report. This is a second reading, which is required by law. Just again, the effects on implementation of the general plan and housing element were outlined in your staff report. That adopted the segmented ordinances will enable the city to report compliance with housing element implementation measures that were attachment A in your upcoming reporting cycle. And in addition, meeting our Department of Housing and Community Development Certified Housing Element comment letter, which was attachment B. And it also allows the city to report out certain portions of the housing element implementation programs. There are various numbers that would need to be completed before February. Recently, city staff attended an SB CAG meeting with HCD, and they were very poignant about their new online permitting system and ensuring that we provide a narrative of where we are at with the progress of implementing our housing element. And then again, there was a proposed ordinance history that we provided to you based on where we got here today. And there are some other various potential alternatives that are available for you this evening. So I could elaborate more if you like during comments and questions from the council, but with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Council, questions?
Well, Raphael, you introduced in the agenda an alternative that we should consider. Do you want to review that?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, Mayor Infante made it very clear that there was a direction to city staff to go ahead and potentially amend the ordinance. And so city staff came up with the idea of, in terms of the objective standards, and so direct staff to make succinct sort of changes to the ordinance within 60 days. And the first one is amend the general plan to remove the R3 lots from the village design district boundary that's shown in the community design element and the zoning map. The second was amend the zoning ordinance to repeal Chapter 10 objective standards. And the third point is to amend zoning ordinance table 11.7 to only allow up to 49% of the gross floor area for residential uses of the VMU. So what this does is basically sort of creates the sort of the ability to sort of put a cap on residential uses so that more than 51% of residential uses could not go into the village area, and instead just revert back to the DRC and having the ability to have subjective standards. And then there's another alternative which directs staff to do a working group. So we keep the objective standards as is, again, as a starting point, as always intended by city staff. That working group would consist of DRC member, Planning Commission, the City Council. We can figure out ways to provide sort of public input as a part of the working staff, but again, getting it to where we truly desire to go. And so that is another alternative versus directing a straight, succinct change to the code.
Any other comments? Questions, rather, I should say?
Well, sorry, I have some. Go ahead, Dave.
Raphael, on page 52 of our reports, you show where the Village Design District DD1, you have a partial change for that on Copenhagen from R3 to DR20? Or is that, I'm not understanding.
So
It's within the DD1, correct?
correct. Currently, as the first ordinance has proposed, it's currently included in the DD1 district. And again, that could be an option to staff to come back and eliminate those R3 lots out of the DD1 district, which has its pros and its cons. So I can, if you'd like, I can get into both sides of it, but
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, this is what's zoned now, and you're proposing that would be multi-use, commercial.
The current zoning is D20. The R3 is what the new zoning would be if the ordinances tonight are adopted.
Okay, thank you. That's what I didn't know what, it
Yeah.
was going from what to which way.
Yeah, and so the TRC obviously is the current zoning for the pink in that diagram, and village mixed use, or VMU, would be the new zoning for the pink. And then the brown is currently DR20 but would turn to R3.
Interesting.
As opposed to VMR or VMU?
No, I think, so the distinction that Raphael's highlighting is that the parcels that are in the red dash circle, one of the comments we received at the introduction was that maybe those shouldn't be part of the design district overlay, which is, if you see that purple line that kind of cuts across the bottom,
Yes.
that's the boundary of the design district overlay. Those parcels that are outlined in red there could be moved outside of the design district boundary, because the main reason for objective standards, or one of the main drivers for objective standards, is the fact that for residential projects, you can only, that meet the definition of a housing development, which would be a lot of residential projects. We're talking about almost like everyone for that zoning. You can only apply objective standards and deny an application based on objective standards. So if you wanted to have those parcels look Danish or meet the same design standards as the commercial properties next door in the village area, you'd want to have them included and to have objective design standards apply to them. As explained in the staff report, the council should also consider the fact that under the VMU zoning with village mixed use, as the name implies, there would be mixed use projects allowed under, again, if the ordinances tonight are adopted, there'd be mixed use projects allowed in the village. And so again, there could be, those projects could count as residential development projects under the Housing Accountability Act. And for those same reasons, you'd want to have objective standards, because for those types of projects, you can't deny a project based on subjective standards. You have to have objective criteria. And if a project meets all the objective criteria, the city's hand, you can't really tie, the city's hands are tied, and we can't deny a project based on a subjective criteria. But if you have objective design criteria, then that gets folded into what they have to meet. And we could potentially, if they're not meeting those objective design criteria, deny the project. So it gives you a little more control over those residential projects. But we understood that there was some interest in potentially moving those R3, currently D20 would be R3 properties outside of the design district. So that's what this diagram's trying to highlight, is what properties we're talking about there.
Because your alternative says to remove all the R3 lots from the village design district, which this would be.
Right,
So you'd move it from R3 to
right. So,
RD20.
We would just move the overlay boundary, not the zone.
yeah, the zone would stay the same. It's just that purple line would go up and around the block of red, like where the red goes. So the purple line would not enclose any brown properties.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question to kind of simplify that? Because I had a really positive reaction that you all put this in the agenda. It kind of puts a fine or a focus on one of the things that complicates the decisions that or the fact that we're trying to apply objective standards to what's historically been the commercial district that, for Solvang, has been intentional design. And so if we separated where we've suddenly blended residential with commercial, we could make more effective binary decisions. So I want to simplify what I think you just told us, Chelsea, which is if we were to remove these R3s from the design overlay, we could then really make decisions on applying objective standards just to true residential properties and parcels, and keep the design DD1 overlay mostly undisturbed, and commercial with mixed use applications, but primarily truly commercial.
So if you move, yeah, there's kind of two parts of the residential that's within the design district overlay right now. One of them is these R3. And so if you move those outside of the design district overlay, that's one section of residential that would not have any objective design standards. And so if that means that it would not look, we could not require them to look Danish, right? So if you want them to have the same look as the commercial properties below, then the way to do that is to keep them in the design district overlay and adopt the objective standards as a starting point, and then we can continue to move forward with them. If you think that block doesn't matter as a policy matter, that we don't care if it looks Danish or old world, then yeah, that can come out of the design district overlay. Just understand that projects that are those projects, we're going to only really be able to enforce objective standards that apply to those projects.
Understood, but the inverse of that, if I may, is that if we put objective standards into the commercial zone, that true DD1, we are risking an erosion of the purity of our design standards for the Danish village.
Well, so I think let me get to the other half of it, because in addition to those RD20 zones, right, there is also under the proposed village mixed use zone, it would allow for mixed use projects, and even under the current zone, residential is allowed as a secondary use, right?
Complicated.
Yeah, in a complicated form. So part of what the alternative here is to, that's why the last bullet point on the alternative is to amend that table 11.7 to only allow 49% of the gross floor area for residential uses inside the village mixed use, because that would mean that it's not a triggering the Housing Accountability Act. Okay, because it's a mostly commercial project then. I've got that right.
Which
Yeah.
just, I want to
And-
crystallize that point, which I think is okay, because we weren't going to get credit for any of the mixed-use housing units anyway
You do
against
actually.
RENA.
You very much get credit for them.
If they get built, you get credit.
You get credit for converting office spaces to residential units. You very much get credit. Any new unit we create, we get credit for.
Okay, so what you were going to speak though, Raphael, what is the downside of this option?
It was so the upside of keeping it in is it provides developers who potentially tend to redevelop a site the minimum standard required to get to a public hearing. And that minimum standard does try to elicit the old world Danish design. It's not trying to destroy it. It's not trying to bring it down. It's trying to at least give a developer or property owner a start. Right now we have guidelines, but the guidelines is an interpretation based on whoever DRC or Planning Commission or City Council members sitting up here, whereas the objective standard is there for city staff to take a look at it. And I can definitively say, and my staff can say, no, we will not take this because it doesn't include the minimum standards. Go redo it because you do not meet our standard. And if a developer still doesn't want to meet our standards, that's okay, because then the developer can turn around and say, city staff, I don't meet your standards. Fair enough, I could take you to the DRC and let the DRC make a determination if what you are doing meets the findings to override the standards. So the positives to that is just that. And additionally, from a design aspect, the thought at the time of the Planning Commission was to continue the design theme throughout the block and stop it at a mid-block, which makes sense. But here, if you run it abruptly with zoning, you can then have a hodgepodge that may or may not develop the way you want it and doesn't carry the theme along Copenhagen. So that's the positive is you kind of lock in that Danish theme along this end. If you take it out, then what that means is that a residential project in R3 that goes in doesn't have an objective standard to start with, and they can pretty much, if a developer chooses not to want to play ball, and some of them choose to, some of them do not, until we have objective standards that are specific for residential, they're allowed to do what they want from a design standpoint.
If I can try to, I think what you're getting at, Councilmember Arona, is that if we take out the two types of residential pieces from the village mixed use, then you're right that the residential, like, legal reason for why we would want objective standards is not there. There's no analogous Housing Accountability Act type provision for commercial projects that have the same thrust and need for objective standards. But as Raphael just explained, the positive about having objective standards potentially for the commercial properties too is it sets a baseline for design that's consistent across all projects. So I think that's what the council's weighing, right, is whether they see they want the benefit, you all want the benefit of having objective design standards for commercial and residential, or whether, as a policy matter, you don't want objective standards at all for the commercial projects, in which case the way to go about that would be to not have projects in the design district or zoning in the design district that's going to trigger a Housing Accountability Act project, because otherwise we're going to end up with a residential project that we don't have control over the design for.
Yeah, and ultimately, and this becomes a policy question for this council, and again, I do want to clarify, we do have property owners that have approached city staff, especially over the last 6 to 8 weeks, that have wanted to know, can they convert empty offices to residential? And there is currently a complicated formula because residential in the TRC is what's considered a secondary use. So if these office spaces that are currently unoccupied and not deriving any sort of income for that property owner and don't get improved, if they were to be converted to residential uses, we most certainly take credit from a RENA standpoint. And as outlined in our staff report, especially on the infill incentives, that is essentially what we're doing is doing that, but again, in the way we see fit. So if the council wants to maintain that sort of ultimate commercial control, as Chelsea had said, setting that table to 49% would pretty much do it. So it still allows us that total commercial, but at the same time, open up the possibilities for a little bit more residential in the village, and taking credit for that RENA and hitting some of these implementation measures that we're required to amend anyways.
Are you totally confused like I am?
Actually, I think I understand. So to me, there is limited downside with this alternative. It gets us control in the design district, which is what we need. Governance, I should say, governance. And a preservation of what makes Solvang and unique. And and it makes a clear separation for residential, the R3 zoned properties.
Which is what you're recommending, right? That we move it out of, we move the R3 out of the DD1?
Well, so, I mean, staff's recommendation in the staff report is to adopt the ordinances as proposed and keep the design district 1 as is with the R3 in and with allowing for mixed use at over 49%. But this is an alternative where you would adopt for second reading and adopt the ordinances tonight, but then direct staff to come back within 60 days with these changes. So both alternatives have you adopting the ordinances before you tonight, but the second one, essentially we would roll some of that back within 60 days to meet these, the 3 bullet points. And then, I think the alternative is assuming that you would still want objective design standards for the design district, but that we would bring those back at a later date after we have time to workshop it with the community and the DRC and the Planning Commission. So if that, but it sounds maybe, were you suggesting that you wouldn't want any objective design standards in the design district?
No, I know we need to have them because I did read in the table that it's mandatory, right? I understand. What gives me real consternation is that and you've said it several times, we're accepting objective design standards, which is effectively our legislation that is inadequate or incomplete and needs modification. And that just feels like we're rushing something.
Well, the objective standards for most communities, they change, and that's the one thing I want to just be very clear is if this council or the next council wants to make a change, it most certainly can always make a change. Our ordinances can be crafted to be flexible, but it also should be recognized that our ordinances need updating and need change at a much more succinct pace than what has been completed in this community for over the last 30 years. That is very much a council policy. And it is okay to make these sort of a living and breathing doc where we are checking in with the DRC and or the council every year to make sure that this is what we want. And that is the direction that the council wants in terms of the preservation and our brand, if that makes sense.
It's a good point.
The point applies because the state is continuously giving us new legislation, no question, and therefore the intricacies, the complexities of what we have to do, even more frequently than annual iterations, it's difficult, no question. But we're also about to change councils, and thankfully there's some continuity here. But if there wasn't, imagine, we'd still be dealing with the complexity of multi-chapter legislative change and policy decisions that we're making, and you're trusting us and the staff to track it. in detail.
If I may, Councilmember Rona, I think after this update, the state's going to keep changing things and we'll keep trying to adapt it, but keep in mind that this update is trying to make up for the lack of update for
Very aware.
decades.
We're all in the entire room. We're all feeling that.
Yeah,
right?
so I'm our hope and our goal, like what Raphael has tried to do with his planning department with this update, is to, get us to a point where going forward it will be more bite-size updates that are reactive to state law as it comes about, rather than sitting on it and then having this big pile to wade through.
Instead of 370 pages to absorb in 4 days.
Trust us, we don't want to do it again either.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm sure.
And I think with our housing element implementation, I'll be the first to say, trying to get that done and trying to get the housing element approved into the finish line for HCD. HCD staff does not recognize the amount of lift it takes to do these objective standards, and gives us municipalities an unrealistic time frame to get them completed. And I think with the state's new reporting system, they are very much looking for movement. And that's what I've heard from HCD in our last SB-CAG meeting, which was about 5 days ago. So that it's, at this point, it has to be a living document in order to get it right. But the whole point is to maintain our brand and give people a starting point, knowing that we're going to tinker the heck out of these things because they need to be.
Any other questions for the staff report? In that case, let's go to the public. I have 2 requests for presentations. Mr. Martin, I believe you're up first.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Stephen Martin, a resident of Solvang. And I understand what the planning department is saying, that this should be a living code or city ordinance, and it can be changed at various times, and that it hasn't been reviewed substantially and changed for decades. I think the word was used. I don't know if we have any particular reason to think that that will change substantially. We're making one huge change based on the recommended statutory changes that the planning department has worked very hard on and put forward. I presume and hope that council has read every page, all 370, and read the planning department's report, and understands the both intended and unintended consequences of these statutory changes. Because I guess my own personal philosophy is, if you're going to make a big change, which this is, maybe one is making up for decades of lack of attention, do it as right as you can and take as much time as you need to fully understand it and get it right. You can always change it, yeah, but it's always harder to change it and back up. Now, I would recommend that the council consider reviewing this again. We've had these documents in front of us, the public and the council, for now not much more than 3 weeks. And you're being asked to read 370 pages of statutory changes and a report that's making up for decades of inattention, and you're asked to review it and pass it all at once. And I just don't think that's good government. And if the state is putting pressure on you, and I think the planning department has said the state wants to see movement, well, call them up. Ask the Housing and Community Development, if you can have more time, or that you're working in good faith and you want to get it right. But don't just let them bully you without even asking. They may say, fine, we're willing to give you the time to look at these major changes and deal with them and do it right. So why are we threatened by the state to just throw up our hands and, I think it was said earlier, just roll over and not do the work? It's hard work. I cannot imagine doing a 370-page review and getting lay people advice from the planning department so you understand it. It's very difficult to understand. We tried, we read it, but it's very difficult to understand, and we don't have the help of the planning department to explain every detail. And we could be making some mistakes, and we've pointed out a few things that will have real consequences for Solvang in these statutes. And in 3 weeks, you're going to go from 0 to full speed and pass them. I just don't think that's right. I think you should ask the state for more time if you really feel like they're gonna threaten you and punish you for not taking more time or for taking more time, ask them, please give us more time. We want to do the right thing for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Al Cortese?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I just want to comment that, as I understand it, the only necessity for rezoning any of the areas on the map is to rezone Site C, which we supported, and that the pressure to ensure that the substantial compliance by the HCD is not revoked for some reason is basically to demonstrate movement. And I think that the rezoning of Site C would demonstrate that movement, since that's the only one of the three areas, A, B, and C, I think it was, or B, D, and C, whatever the alphabet is, that would demonstrate the necessary movement. Obviously, we don't have any contact with the HCD, so we don't know what kind of pressure they're putting on the city to do this. But I must indicate, as I did the last meeting, that to try to review all of this material in a couple of weeks is a massive effort, and that you really ought to take your time to do it. So with that, I would object to the passage by second reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more written requests. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just real quickly, I echo the sentiments of the two previous speakers that I think it's an...
Tell me who you are first.
I'm sorry.
For the record.
Greg Kent, resident of Solvang. Sorry. Thank you. And so I think that it's an awful lot to digest and roll out. From the discussion, it's clear there's some confusion, at least among some members of the council. I respect that the staff has done a tremendous amount of work. I believe that they're trying to do the right thing. However, I think that there is a real chance of unintended consequences. I don't know, I'm not convinced that all of the zoning changes have been fully assessed. For instance, in the previous meeting, we heard about possibility of 10 units per acre, conversion of existing single-family residences on 7,000 square lot to possibly 6 units. There's a practicality measure associated with that where some of those are just not financially feasible. And I'm not aware of any assessment, and it would be a big task, I admit, to look at all the properties affected by the zoning change and say, is this really a risk to these properties or not? But I do think that at least needs to be thought about, and that maybe getting rid of all of the 7R1 and the 8R1 and replacing them with R2, maybe that's not the right answer. So I encourage you to think about that more deeply and consider the unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aaron, I believe you wanted to speak?
Yeah, Aaron Peterson, Solvang. Quickly, 3 minutes here. The lots that are on the end of Copenhagen Street that we're talking about between 5th and 4th have never been under the DRC purview at all. They were zoned DR20 to go to R3. It was only advisory. We never had that under our DRC, number one. Number two, we've never gotten credit for our mixed use currently because maybe there's 25,000, 5 million square feet on the second floor that could be converted. We'll get credit if it ever gets converted. We do not get credit for it now. If we got credit for it now, we wouldn't have rezoned all this stuff that everyone's here arguing about because we had all the square footage that we could have said would have been second residential units and could have been apartments. Number one, state law only deals with housing objective standards, not commercial objective standards on design. number one. Number two, reduce the mix. It's so simple. Reduce the mix from 50-50 to 49-51. That takes that off the table, 100%. According to staff and according to my research, that's what it does. Take those lots on Copenhagen Street that were DR20, that are R3, take them out of it. Just take the mix out. They've been out of it. Appeal to the developers to do something Northern European. If they don't have to. Just exactly like the SEMA group or Keneal's three little projects that got done behind the PAR building, they didn't have to meet Northern European because it was DR20. They don't have to do that. It's okay. The 2 units that were built over there did. We talked to them. Ken Hunter's on Alicel didn't have to meet our design for Northern European. Ken Hunter did. Thank you very much that he did. Those are developer choices. When it's in multifamily, we don't have the control over them. The only way you have control of them is to have enough objective standards that we can meet the state requirements. It's almost impossible to meet those objective standards. Staff did a great job as a first step. It does not meet. We're going to have a developer that says these objective standards that you guys are going to adopt doesn't meet all the requirements. Overhangs, balconies, doors, windows, yellow brick and red brick. Staff did a yeoman's job on this. It needs more detail. If I'm a developer, I can still challenge it and say, it's still subjective, and therefore I don't have to meet your guidelines, and I can do what I want. We need better design for DD1 and DD2. No question about it. We just need to get together and have those meetings and have public input to come up with it. It doesn't have to be reviewed every year. It needs to be reviewed when we need to review it. These things have been around for 30, 40 years. They've been really good in our commercial zones, not in our multifamily zones. We've never had that requirement, and we should not do it. State law deals with housing, not with commercial. Cut out the housing, and we're fine. We work together. We get by June, July, I don't know when, staff and get the meetings together. Just don't have those Brown Act meetings where nobody can stand up and talk. Otherwise, you get 3 minutes and you're done. Like the bell just went off and you're finished. And it's a work in progress, as staff says. We all agree to that.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Do we have anybody else? Ed, please.
Ed Skit, resident of Solvang. And the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to paraphrase Nancy Pelosi in that you have to vote for it to find out what's in it. And that's what we have with this right now. We have, and I have 2.5 problems with this project, what's going on. The first problem goes back on part of the existing city council and their predecessors. We had a number of years where we did not have a planning director, and a lot of the stuff that came up from the state just got pushed forward, and pushed forward till right now. Second problem I have is, excuse me, Raphael, but the current proposition or that you're putting forward has been put together in basically the last 6 months. It has become one giant 300 and some odd page proposition, which I don't know if all of you have read through it all the way through, but I doubt that any of you have actually read all 300 and some odd pages in the last 3 weeks. This is a project with all the various proposals and resolutions. It could have really been brought to you over the last 6 months in smaller, easier to digest pieces that not only could you understand, the citizens of Solvang could understand them, and have workshops where people could come and speak without a time limit. That's the one thing Aaron mentioned, a 3-minute timeline in a Brown Act meeting. You cannot get any information that is relatively useful to the planners. The last item is, my green light here, is the design review guidelines. We've had guidelines that have been effective in the commercial districts for over 30 years. We have new guidelines in this amendment or ordinance that when we were here last week or 2 weeks ago, the planning director said, no, we can't change these, we have to go on with them. Now, today, it was, well, yeah, they can be changed, and we can start up setting some public workshops. We should, if it were going to be changed, we should have had the public workshops prior to this point. I agree with some of the other individuals. If we really need to do this, let's do it where the citizens of Solvang have good input and we get a good piece of legislation out of this. We do not need to go through and ram something through because the state says we have to have it by the first of the year. And anyway, like I said, you look at it right now, I go back to Nancy, right now, if you want it, if you want to know what's in it, you have to vote for it. That doesn't work for the feds. It doesn't work for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Do you have anybody else that would like to say something? I don't see anybody on Zoom, so we'll bring it back to the council. Comments?
Obviously, I understand the concern about passing legislation that it's appropriate for the city, that it doesn't have unintended consequences, that everybody has the time to review. But, everybody's thinking about the development that is to be. We are not thinking about the current development. We just had a fire that could have spread to adjacent buildings that has been sitting empty. Many buildings currently are sitting empty because there is no legislation, there is no parameters that set a starting point for developers to start working on. I am concerned that by dragging our feet and not starting the process of setting up legislation that is relevant to today's processes, we are risking having more buildings empty that are just rotting away and risking transients or, consequences of neglect by just bringing in more nuisances. Obviously, I don't think the design guidelines are sufficient. I think that there is much work to be done, but I am concerned that by not starting it, by not giving us a starting point, that we're just gonna keep, this project that is much needed, it's just gonna get buried among all of the other things that the city have to do. So I understand the concern of not wanting to rush into it, but I'm also concerned about the consequences of not having it. Part of the reason why developers have it easy on projects that take advantage of incentives, of loopholes that the state put is, those allow land that is not built yet to be built. We have an opportunity to create housing on land that is already developed, that it's already built, and we just need to provide the framework to do it. I am worried that by not being able to update our codes and ordinances so that these buildings can be redeveloped, we are, making it easier for developers to push for projects on areas where we would rather not have developed. So it's tough, but
It is.
I do want to bring that up.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can interject, I think at this point, we need to separate out the discussion on the three ordinances. So,
Right.
And I apologize for not catching this before you started talking. So at this point, both Ms. Elizabeth Rona and Ms. Claudia Rona should recuse themselves for the first two ordinances, and we can proceed on discussion of those two and then come back for further discussion on the last ordinance, which is the bulk of the Title 11 changes, and which I take Ms. Claudia Arona's comments to be about. So if we can proceed in that manner.
Can I make one more last comment?
Of course.
Just two comments. I think Claudia Rona is making some great points, but we've already agreed as a council to do some additional work on the sign ordinance, which is embedded in this documentation. So there was already some consensus that some of this work needed to be done and could be done now to review, and because it was so detailed, and that applied specifically to the commercial entities and the business owners. I think we need to not lose sight. Second comment is, don't lose sight. What's driving this change is our compliance with housing, not to enable commercial development. So we're taking the bundle. We're accepting the catalyst for this is really to meet RENA and to enable HCD conditional. Our approval right now is conditional based on some demonstrable action that we're moving in the right direction with regard to hitting our RENA goals. But it is not. So we're taking the bundle that we're going to address commercial things at the same time, that housing is really what we're trying to solve.
I think it's kind of hard to separate both, because a lot of the housing, I would hope it's allowed in the commercial zoning. We're 95% built out, so many of our housing units are going to be met on the downtown area, not in residential areas.
Well, this is back to the comment that it should only be 49% allowed of housing on top of the businesses.
And if I can just stop us there and have the recusal so we can continue discussion on the first two ordinances.
So they will return back for the adopting 24-378?
So Ms. Claudia Rona will come back for adopting. So first we're going to do 377.
Right.
And with both of them recused, and then Ms. Claudia Rona can come back for 376. And then Ms. Elizabeth Arona will come back for 378, and all five of you will be there for 378.
All right. Well, then at this point, I am recusing myself because of conflicts of property and businesses within 500 to 1,000 feet of the properties being discussed.
Okay.
Do I need to read the script again? I
No,
just
you
say I'm
can
recusing
you can
myself?
reference the introduction. You say recuse for the same reasons as you did on the introduction of the ordinance.
I'm just recusing myself until you call me back in the room. Thank you.
And for the record, it's for the same reasons as were outlined in the last meeting when we introduced the ordinance.
Thank you.
Don't go too far.
Okay, so we're back to starting with adopting by title only ordinance 24-377, is that correct?
Correct. So we should have any discussion on these items, and just to reiterate, this would be the Village Design District Overlay Zone, amending the standards for the professional office zone, and rezoning the tourist commercial zone to village mixed use, rezoning the institutional zone to public institutional, and rezoning the commercial retail zone, C2 zone, to retail commercial CR, and then rezoning a few, like the Creekside open space to open space. It's currently recreational. And then rezoning several lots downtown, including the Solvang Park is going to go from recreational to parks, and then rezoning a host of places downtown, like essentially the public parking lots downtown and the city buildings, from tourist commercial to public institution, because those are city-owned lots.
Let me ask a couple questions and set this up. First off, I know that Raphael has been talking to HCD. So if we do not adopt this ordinance, what are the consequences?
As outlined in your staff report, specifically attachment B, there's a conditional letter that is in there that was given to us in February. And as a part of that conditional letter, it stated that the city must, city must continue timely and effective implementation of all programs, including but not limited to HEF, HEG, HEH, HEJ, adequate sites, so that's Site C, HEK, mixed-use developments, HEN, affordable housing incentive program, HEO, municipal code updates, HEP, affirmatively furthering fair housing, HEQ, housing for disabled persons, HES, emergency shelters and transitional supportive housing, HEU, missing middle housing, HEX, anti-displacement strategy, and HPY, objective design standards by right multifamily projects. So the bulk of the actions this evening, specifically some that have deadlines for February 15th of 2025, would be satisfied as we report out to HCD.
And this ordinance, a lot of that is in the last ordinance that you will adopt, but
Yeah.
I would say, as much as we've segmented them for conflicts, it is a holistic zoning code update that kind of all goes together. But the consequences legally is if we don't show that progress, that they're, as this is explained in the staff report, that they're, required, that they're requiring us to do, based on the timing and when we have to report and what progress HCD is expecting us to have done over the last year, it's possible that they would revoke our substantial compliance determination for our housing element, which would mean that all our work to try to rezone the sites that we've identified in our housing element to get out of the potential for builder's remedy applications, we'd be back at square one. City would be more exposed to additional builder's remedy applications potentially. There's new legislation, SB 1037, that
Okay, let's
creates.
not go into new legislation just yet.
Well, yeah.
My point is this. You're saying that we can take this section of DD20 and move it over into R3. If we want to do that, do we have to reject this one to make that change?
I see. Staff's recommendation would be to adopt the ordinance as is and then direct staff
That's staff's
to.
recommendation. What is the option if
The-
I decide not to do, if we decide not?
The alternative that you're referring to is still to adopt the ordinance, but then provide specific direction to staff to come back within 60 days to take those three actions, including taking out the R3.
Okay.
So, and I think this would be an appropriate ordinance to make that recommendation because this is the ordinance where you're approving the DD1 overlay zone.
Right.
So the motion would be still to adopt the ordinance, but then provide that specific direction. And, again, staff's recommendation is to adopt the ordinance, and then we would workshop the design standards, but this puts that on a more definitive timeline and provides more specific direction. The alternative provides more specific direction about removing the residential pieces from the DD1, so that it would be really a commercial-focused overlay zone.
And to add to that, this recommendation is based on city staff's risk assessment. Ultimately, in the end, this is a council decision. So we're putting out there basically what we view based on state law, based on our adopted housing element, the best track, hearing the feedback from the last meeting and hearing tonight's feedback. But again, ultimately it's up to the council to make that decision, to back those out or approve the ordinance and then direct staff to make a very succinct cut to take those out.
Gotcha. Yes, sir.
This is directed to Raphael. Your communications, the letter you refer to is 11 months old. Have you had any communications with HCD, either written or verbally, as to their workload, their demand for those dates? Is there any elasticity to these deadlines?
So the answer is yes. We very much had a conversation when we did the two sites. HCD was quite proud of us to turn it around so very quickly. As far as, and then 5 days ago in the SP CAG meeting, the communication was with them about actually what is it that they're looking for in the implementation measures and what needs to get done. And they are looking for those deadlines to be met that were adopted by the council back in December of last year. For full disclosure, about a good half of these programs are actually carryovers from your last housing element, which means we did no action. So that, and HCD does have access to all of those data sets. So again, there's that risk that we have that if you're willing to take, then take it. But my advice is to not. Again, because it outweighs the potential of what's going on, and they have a specific, thanks to the new legislation, they have a specific mandate, the Attorney General, to pull weight on cities to go do what they need to do.
And I would just add to that, if I may, I would say other programs or other statutory regimes, the implementing department is a little more cooperative and, likes to work with agencies. I'm thinking in particular of Cal Recycle with SB 1383. We've seen a lot of, they want to work with cities because they know it's a challenge to implement that. HCD's posture is much more aggressive. We see them taking interpretations that cities, don't think are really even supported by the law and running with them and imposing, sending violation letters against cities based on their interpretation. So they're taking aggressive stances, and especially with enforcement across the state. So sometimes there's a context where you feel like you can fly under the radar a little bit. With HCD, I don't think we're in that context, even if we're trying our best. Cities that are trying really hard. I mean, as Raphael said before, HCD doesn't seem to take into consideration the practical realities of trying to implement all this housing legislation. They demand results, whether it's practical for us to do so or not. So just keep, that's the context that we're in. It's not as permissive as you would hope.
Mr. Murphy?
And to reiterate what Raphael said a moment ago, it's obviously a council decision on what to do here, but from a staff perspective, we're tasked with providing advice that gives the council the least risk option. Could you reject everything and that tell us to start over and nothing happened? Absolutely, that could happen. It's not likely based on, as Chelsea was pointing out, some of the activities taken by HCD against other jurisdictions. We're on their radar. And as Raphael pointed out, some of these things weren't done from the last housing element. So for them to give us, a get out of jail free card seems to be, betting on the wrong side of the line. I would point out too, the staff report calls out some specific examples of pieces of this ordinance change that have come before council and before the planning commission for over 6 months. So even though it's coming as one large bite, it doesn't lend itself to dividing it up, parsing it out too much. So it's unfortunate, and as I explained to at least a couple of you in private conversation, there's some lessons learned here for staff that it won't happen again. But we are up against the wall, and as Chelsea started to say, Senate Bill 1037 is effective January 1st, and if we have a non-compliant housing element, the state can fine us up to $50,000 a month. So, and we wrote a letter advising the governor to not sign that. He did not listen to our advice. But again, being a gambling man, if I were a gambling man, I would not bet that we wouldn't come out of this scot-free.
I owe you that money from the Bears game, by the way. I have comments.
Okay. At this point,
Can I make
yes,
comment?
sir, please.
This is a really rock and a hard place. And the Assembly and the Senate and the Governor and the Attorney General since Gray Davis have had a macro agenda in this state. And they really don't care what specific needs cities have. During COVID, we tried to keep Solvang open the second round in December of whatever year it was, 20 or whatever. And I was interviewed by Steve Hilton on Fox News about how he called it David versus Goliath, what small cities do to try and fight Sacramento. And the legislature and the Senate, et cetera, they have a macro agenda. And with all due respect to the speaker, to ask the state for a special favor because we have specific circumstances is one of the silliest things I've ever heard, because they don't care. The state of California doesn't care what 482 municipalities have. They don't care that June Lake and Solvang and Yountville are so reliant on tourist occupancy tax. They don't care. So you're barking up the wrong tree when you're saying maybe we can deal with the state of California. They don't care. And that's why to be honest, I'm happy to be done, because it's been a real tightrope trying to not upset the residents and at the same time comply with what the state of California. And some of the speakers act like it's, oh, you always throw it back to the state of California. Well, the state of California can really punish people. And if y'all voted for the people that are running the state of California year after year after year,
All right, Robert.
shame on you.
All right,
So
Robert.
that's my last comment. I'm just tired of it. Sorry.
All right. So we need a motion on what we're going to do with this particular title for ordinance 24-377. All right, I'll move that we adopt ordinance 24-377, but we ask staff to have a review of the DR20 to R3, the 51% combination of housing and things of that nature, come back with us within a month. Well, in a month would be tough. We're going to be just stretching it out a little bit. Within 2 months, that we can have a public workshop and talk about this. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I can get behind that with a second, but I wanted to inquire further, if I may.
Absolutely.
Are you also, so that's alternative or option one is what you're employing with the,
Well, it's just this one here, the 377. We haven't talked about 76 or 78 yet.
this is 4367, I think. isn't
But
it?
there's some alternatives at the end of the staff report.
In the alternatives. for the
Yeah.
Staff report on page 53.
Well, these all, yes.
Number one shows the 49, 51%.
Right. Yeah, there it is. You're right. Thank you.
Are you also directing staff to repeal the objective standards in chapter 10 then? Would that be, and I think right now that direction should, should you give it, should be focused on DD1, because this ordinance only addresses the village design district standards. The mission design district standards are in the last ordinance that we'll
Right.
consider.
So what you're saying is basically move forward with the resolution, but add to that or make a separate notation to staff to implement these items?
Correct.
Would that be the proper way?
Yeah, so the motion as proposed is to adopt the ordinance and direct staff to, and as I understand it, bring forward an amendment to remove the R3 lots from the village design district boundary. And,
Basically, everything in the alternatives on number one there.
okay,
And add.
And that's the
and
clarification.
Adding to that the workshop,
and to,
which is not in this.
To make it a workshop to look at it, yeah.
so instead of the tweak to the proposed alternative would be to, within 60 days, have a workshop on those 3 items, rather than bring them directly to council for amendment in 60 days.
Yes? Robert's given up altogether. Sorry.
Yes, because that says within 60 days, so yeah.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you for that clarification. That's the motion on the floor.
And
For
a
a,
second.
we have a second of that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona, absent. Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes,
Mayor Infante.
Yes,
Motion passes 3-0.
thank you.
Okay, and then just to clarify for the record, that direction so far for the second bullet point in alternative 1, amending the zoning ordinance to repeal Chapter 10 objective standards only applies to the DD1 standards, because the ordinance we just adopted only discussed the DD1. So if you want to revisit that alternative in the third ordinance tonight, we can. And I'm just noting that.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Wow. So now we will go to ordinance 24-376.
Correct.
We want to get a separate staff report on that?
No, it's already been presented, so.
So it's just a discussion on that ordinance, and this one is quite small.
Yeah.
It's just to rezone, sorry, I'm scrolling back down to it. Yeah, it's just to rezone 2 specific parcels from recreation to open space.
Right.
What exhibit is that?
So the ordinance is on page 74 of your agenda.
Oh, I got that. Is there an exhibit that shows that map or those parcels?
Yes.
And that
It's
is what?
on page, let's see how quickly my finger can scroll.
I think it's,
Here.
It's the zoning map at the end.
yeah.
On the last
I always
page.
do this.
I didn't write
That's
it
the
down.
zoning map there
Two-
on page 262.
262, yeah. And so these would be,
There it is.
if you go into the peninsula or the finger,
Yeah.
they're like basically the 2 bottommost, I guess that's southern, right?
Right.
Oriented
Yeah.
north-south.
Yeah.
The 2 southernmost parcels labeled OS there next to the ER1 housing
Yeah.
area.
Thank you.
Okay. Comments, questions, motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
Ordinance 24-376? That's the one. I'll second it. Roll call, please.
This one was,
Councilmember Clark,
yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent, Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right. That moves us to adoption of ordinance 24-378, and I believe we can bring, oh, here she is. Thank you, Raphael. So repealing and replacing Title 11 in the municipal code and the official zoning map for the city. Second reading.
And if we just want to update for those that were not in the room,
Yeah.
the ordinance number 24-377 has been adopted with direction to staff to bring those 3 alternative bullet points forward for a community workshop within 60 days. And just a note that so far, the second bullet point only applies to the DD1 objective standards. And again, that bullet point was to, remove those objective standards and rework them. So for this ordinance 378, if that alternative for the mission design district standards, if the direction is to apply a similar, have a similar staff direction for the mission design district standards, that should be included in whatever, that has not been adopted at this point. Put it that way.
Okay.
And I can help answer questions on that if that's confusing.
Why, you just confused us.
I'm sorry, I was trying to lay out what had already
Yeah.
been done so people know where we're leaving off on this discussion of the third ordinance.
This is replacing Title 11, which are the zoning regulations for the municipal code and for the map.
Yeah, so ordinance 378 is everything in that Title 11 Exhibit A that was not already addressed by the other 2 ordinances.
All right.
It's everything else. It's the balance of the zoning code update.
Comments from the council?
Is this for approval of this as a second reading?
Yes, sir, adoption of the
For just
ordinance.
this item, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion? All right, I will make a motion to adopt by title only ordinance 24-378. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second. I lost the number. I was going to make the motion.
Okay. Put it on the, open your microphone. Say it again, please.
I will second.
Okay, thank you. It's been motioned and seconded. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona,
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Oops. We are in section 9, which is the adjournment. And before we get that, we have council closing comments. If anybody would like to make any closing comments?
If I may, I would like to thank Robert Clark for his years and decades of service to the city.
Love him or hate him.
Well, thank you for what your efforts and endeavors on behalf of the city.
Thank you.
It's well noted, and thank you. And I'd also like to thank Mayor Infante for his dedication and leadership over the past couple of years as mayor and previously as councilman, and welcome back to councilman. Way to be.
Back as a big council. We'll switch seats
Give
there
it
in a
a-
minute.
I'd like to thank the outgoing mayor as well. I think that it's watching the level of effort up close is huge commitment. So thank you for that. But amazing that you're willing to re-up and stay seated. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so before I adjourn this meeting, I'd like to say that serving as your mayor has been a great honor and a privilege. It was great to get to know so many people who I'd probably never have gotten a chance to meet if I hadn't been the mayor. I've also enjoyed meeting and working with other local, county, state representatives. So for a while, I have had my chance as the mayor to represent the city and meet with all of these people. And I want to thank all of you that have been engaged with the council, as well as your commissions, committees, to let us know your issues, thoughts, and suggestions. We sometimes even take them. Mr. Martin's looking at me very sternly. As a child of a career Army officer, I grew up living in a lot of places around the country and around the world, actually. And my career as a management consultant, I also traveled extensively, so I can truly say that Solvang is a very special place. Lastly, I want to thank City Manager Randy Murphy and the city staff for all of their efforts and support of Solvang and of this council. I'm proud of the council's accomplishments during my term, and now it's time to turn over the gavel to the new mayor so we can continue to serve the city, and I will continue to serve as District 1 representative. Thank you all.
May I make a closing comment?
Please.
I want to appreciate the fact that since I started right before COVID, it's been a wild ride. We had a really critical job to do, however long it was ago, Mr. City Manager. We did something very right by bringing you in, and seeing a calm and happy City Hall is the one thing that I'm most proud of, because we had some chaos for a long time, and I'm just really, really pleased that everybody here is happy. I've enjoyed working with all of you, and especially you, Randy. I really enjoyed it very much, so that's all I got to say, but we did something right.
We did a few things right, thank you. We did have a city council that did some things we didn't all care for, so we've been trying to get better. We have gotten...
Oh, and I won't miss public records requests from professional victims and lunatics.
One other public announcement is that we do need, please fill in or get applications for District Number 3, and also DRC and Planning Committee. So anybody that might be interested in those positions, please go to our website or see the city clerk and get the information that you need.
And can you announce the enrollment start and end for those positions?
The applications need to be in for the committees and commissions January 2nd, for District 3 January 3rd.
We made that special, huh?
And I've
Mr.
got a
Murphy.
couple of things here. We have parting gifts for Council Clark and Mayor Infante.
Do they have fuses on them? Do they have a fuse on them?
Oh, wait a minute, I have to say something.
They're not ticking.
I specifically asked Randy if we could forego this because there's people here sitting here that need the next meeting to get started. And he said, well, there's other people besides you, Mr. Clark. And I'm like, great. So let's make this fast so we can get on with the meeting and people can get their work done.
Holy.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Blame me, I insisted that these come about.
Oh, that's so cool.
All right, so I gotta show this off. Look at this, a crystal gavel.
I don't know if it's crystal, but
Oh, it's got my name.
Yeah, so if I hit anything, it'll break. My wife appreciates that particularly. The meeting, oops. We're adjourned. We'll start again in a couple
This is
minutes.
very cool. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy, that's very cool.
Need one.
Gotta get my name tag or I won't know who I am.
It's too big a word.
Somebody would call me out.
City property.
You notice that they let Eric Peterson talk for about a minute beyond his 3 minutes?
Yeah.
They shouldn't do that. I know, I like him and he's good.
Yeah.
He made a good point, but still,
Yeah.
they're playing favorites.
It's not uncommon for them to do that with
I know.
the commission members,
I know.
at least in past history.
It's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
they should just say why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Makes the other people feel bad when they get cut off at midstream.
Order, adjourned regular meeting, and we're back to order at.
Microphone.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
That's the first rule.
Mic's on. We will get back to our meeting. We'll continue from our adjourned regular meeting. And we are in order again at 2023. Excuse me, that's military time, I'm sorry. 8:23 p.m. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Here?
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Brown.
Here. I'm going to ask if, Al, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Al. Appreciate it. Proclamations. We have one proclamation here. Is that right? Okay, yes. Okay, this is for our librarian, Carrie McKinnon. Day of Proclamation, December 12th, 2024. Whereas the Senior Library Technician of the Solvang Library in Los Olivos and San Ynez Library branches, Carrie McKinnon, retires after 25 years at the library. And whereas Carrie McKinnon, Senior Library Technician, retires on December 14th, 2024, after 25 years as the library's leader, whereas Carrie McKinnon was instrumental in providing innovative services to area patrons through her creativity and commitment to providing programming, collection management, and reference services for all ages. Whereas Carrie McKinnon's leadership and example fostered a welcoming and connected environment for community patrons and guests. Whereas Carrie McKinnon collaborated with local schools to provide engaging and instructional programming for students during the summer months. Whereas Carrie McKinnon developed and implemented events and programs that kept library relevant and appealing to patrons of all ages. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor David Brown, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, do hereby proclaim December 12th, 2024 as Carrie McKinnon Day in the City of Solvang, and urge all citizens to congratulate Ms. McKinnon for her dedication and service to the Solvang Library, Los Olivos Branch Library, Santa Ynez Branch Library, and our community, and for our community and our visitors. In witnesses thereof, I have hereto set my hand and have caused the official seal of the City of Solvang to be affixed to this 9th day of December 2024. Carrie, congratulations. Thank you so much.
All right. Hi, I'm Carrie McKinnon, resident of Solvang, and thank you for this proclamation. I really think that the council and previous councils should pat themselves on the back for being so supportive of library service. In the 25 years that I have been there, I've really seen the support from the city for Solvang Library just go up and strengthen, and you should be proud of yourselves for that. And I also want to say, if I have achieved anything, it's really because of the people I work with, the community, the council, the friends of the library, some board members of whom are here. So I want to thank them, and I just want to thank the community. We have great readers in this town, and we're getting more every day. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on. City manager's report, please. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. A mistake already. How about that? Public communication for non-consent items. Would you read that into the record for us, please?
Public communication, non-agenda, and consent items. At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person public comments first.
I have a request from Craig Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations on your new position, and city council members and the newly elected members. My name is Craig Kent. I'm a resident of Solvang, and I'm here to talk about all of our favorite topic, Wildwood. Tonight, I would like to talk about two things. One, the first is traffic and what Caltrans refers to as vulnerable road users. There's an official designation for pedestrians, bicyclists, equestrians, skateboarders, etc. We have data that we have collected, citizens have collected, that show the traffic peaks at 3 periods during the weekdays, with being 7:30 to 9:30 a.m., 11:30 to 1 p.m., 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., and 3 o'clock p.m. to 5 p.m. With the highest vehicular traffic that we measured at the 11:30 to about 12:30 time frame during the school year specifically. Today I had an opportunity to look at the traffic analysis report for Wildwood that was in the most recent submittal, and unfortunately a 1-hour review by a non-expert, admitted non-expert, is wholly insufficient time to be able to do that. But I tried. The level of service study for Wildwood was performed in July of 2024 after schools were out of session and local resident families were going on summer vacation. It should be no surprise that most of the traffic going in and out of the Nielsen Shopping Center and the Mercantile is local, and it makes sense that the lunch hour traffic is higher during the school year and lower during the summer when the various percentages of families are on vacation at any given time. And it's unfortunate the traffic study was taken in July rather than when school was in session, because there would be a much higher traffic number based on the data that the citizens have taken. So our concern specifically is the pedestrian or VRU users crossing Alamo Pintado at Old Mission Drive. And the Wildwood project is going to add ostensibly 100 new residences. Average number of vehicles per residence in California is about 2.5 to 2.7. And so that represents a significant increase of traffic into that intersection, since there's only one way in and out via Old Mission Drive. And the incidence of injuries and fatality due to accidents at that intersection are significantly increased. The data shows that 1/4 of all VRU fatal and serious injury cases are at minor arterial roads, and 1/3 of them are at principal arterial roads, and I think that qualifies for that. So I'm going to repeat again that I urge the city to look into the pedestrian traffic there, look into putting a temporary camera on the intersection, and understand the pedestrian use, because it's not measured by the VMT or the LOS. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Mr. Martin?
Stephen Martin, president of Solvang. I want to just echo a bit what Craig was saying, and also want to point out that the reason that this study was made in July, not in the fall when school was in session, was our own planning department directed them to do that, because they says historically Solvang's traffic is heaviest in the summer and at Christmas time on a whole basis. So they were directed to do their study at the summertime, not during the school season, even though that intersection is very heavily impacted by students who either are going home or going to school or going into Nielsen's for a lunch or whatever they do. I don't think that was good planning. I also want to address the fact that, as I understand it from staff, there is no regulation or law that says you cannot look and copy pieces of an application to take to your own expert to review them. The planning department has this rule by policy, and I assume it's your policy, that public members cannot take copies of reports from experts that the developer supplies to the council and to the planning department. I don't think that's good. I don't see how we can just let the developer put in his report and the public is hamstrung by having to go by appointment only to an hour's session to read a 50 or 60 or 70 or 100-page document, and they can't take it out and give it to their expert to double check it or second guess it. I think you need to change that policy. It would be good government to do so. I'm worried about the advice you're getting, with all deference to our attorney here tonight. I'm worried about the legal advice you're getting. You know, you met in closed session with attorney advising the council and saying that the community development group in the state has taken an exceptional position with respect to builder's remedy, and they cited, as I understand it, the letter from the community development people to Beverly Hills saying that they were in violation. But the letter never said and does not say that if they do not complete their preliminary application, that their if they don't meet the requirements of the preliminary application, their preliminary application is void. Never said that. It also never said that if they don't meet the first 90-day period when they have to provide information by the checklist that's a state checklist. We don't have one, never have had one. Then the preliminary application is void. It never said that that wasn't true. It simply said that an application will have multiple 90-day periods. Of course, they don't get everything in the first 90-day period. They have to go to another 90-day period and then another one. But it's silent as to the fact that if they miss the first 90-day period, the penalty is the preliminary application is void and of no effect. And I don't understand what advice you're getting, but I just don't think it's the right advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody on Zoom or any others in the room that would like to comment? And nobody on Zoom? Okay. We'll close the public comment section and go to the city manager's report.
Yes, thank you. Repeating it's a couple of things that I said earlier, one of which is the tree burn, part of the Eula Fest celebration, had been moved from January 10th to January 3rd out at the Mission. There is a reception honoring Carrie McKinnon for her service this Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. in the Superior Courtroom down by the library. So for those of you that are interested in recognizing her again.
What time again, please?
From 3 to 5 on Thursday this week. Reminder to everyone, it was touched on a little bit at the last meeting, but we are taking applications for the now vacant District 3 council position. We currently have one application, but we always encourage anybody who is interested and eligible, has to be a resident of District 3. We have vacancies also for several of our committees. The Planning Commission and the DRC both have all 5 positions vacant, and 2 of the Major U committees, which are helping give direction regarding the use of the Major U and Major E funds. That will be part of a resolution coming before council soon. I also wanted to recognize Roger Old. His last day is this Friday, and I want to thank him for the service that he provided the city. We're going to miss him, but understand he's off to greener pastures, so we wish him well. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
Randy, would you mind just repeating the due dates for the applications?
So the due dates for the committee and are January 2nd. The due date for the District 3 council position is January 3rd, and the due date for the vacant Public Works Director position is also January 3rd.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody with that skill set, any of those skill sets should step up, please. Okay, that takes us to item 4 for SB 1439. Any reports, council members who wish to share?
I have nothing new to report.
Nothing? Okay. Going on to our next item will be consent items. Madam Clerk, would you read that into the...
Consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during the public communications portion of this agenda.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the board? All things okay? Any changes? Modifications? Any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry, we had that already.
Maybe a question for staff. Last year there were call-outs for variance in the second and fourth Monday council meetings. Is there anything in 2025 that is an anomaly?
The Memorial Day weekend is a Tuesday meeting, not a Monday. I think that's the only one.
Okay.
And if you'll notice, there's also meeting, the second meeting in both July and August are canceled, as is the one at the end of December. That's the staff recommendation. Allow for summer vacations and things.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the consent items 5A through 5F.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent items. We'll have roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes?
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
We have no public hearings, and discussion items include, we need a couple action items as well as discussion. Coming up with a mayor pro tem for 2025, establishing a seating arrangement on the dais, and our committee and agency boards members. So let's start with Mayor Pro Tem for 2025.
Is it my turn?
Do you have any conversation, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'll be happy to serve as mayor pro tem if everybody's okay with it.
Makes it easy.
Yep.
If there's no objection, I recommend that we acknowledge and, do I need a motion for that, or is that, I guess we need a motion? Okay, I'll accept
Yes,
the
you
motion.
should make a motion.
Oh, but I guess, is there any other discussion? No. Okay.
So I'll make a
Accept the
motion to accept Claudia Arona as mayor pro tem for 2025.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for Claudia Arona to be our mayor pro tem for 2025. Is there any, can we have a roll call vote, please?
I apologize.
Is that,
I don't think we did public comment on this.
oh, is it up for public comment?
Well, you're making a motion, so
Okay.
we might, to be safe,
It's
we can
not on
do
my
it.
notes,
Yeah.
but okay.
We can do it.
Is there any public comment on, from anyone about what we hope to do?
Mr. Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Craig Kent. I'm a resident. Do it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anything from the, seeing none, we'll go ahead and, we have a motion and a second to approve Mr. Claudia Arona for Mayor Pro Tem for 2025. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes?
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, our next item of business is establishing the council seating arrangements. Quite candidly, I'm indifferent as to who sits where. So long as I keep this chair for a couple, for the moment.
We can,
I could sit on the end, I guess. But this makes it easy.
I'll move, we leave it the way it is.
I'll just move one over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sit where you're comfortable. That's what I want. And
I'll put Louise at the end. Oh, I'm sorry, whoever we appoint at the end.
prejudice. Do I need public comment on this also?
Yes. I know it seems a little silly, but since we're going to take an official motion, I think it'd be prudent to do public comment. I
Okay,
suspect there's
I'll open
probably
it up
no
for public comment if anybody has any comment. Seeing none, any on the Zoom? I don't see any. I'm up for a motion then.
I move that we accept the seating position as situated currently.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to keep the seating arrangement as is for an indefinite period, I suspect. And let's have roll call.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes?
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, now we get to the hard stuff. Council member appointments to outside
Yay.
agency boards and committees. does everybody have a list of what those committees are? I think they're on page
They're on the last page.
380.
380, so. Any, okay, presently for our SB Association of Governments, SB SCAG, is Mayor Fonte and Arona, Elizabeth Arona is the alternate. I think it's incumbent upon myself to be the representative for our city for that.
So I have a
Who would like-
perspective on this that I think we have a great situation where our council is presenting some good continuity here, and if we can consider that continuity for some of these new appointments, it might be important. It's not just who the representative is, but it's continuity of an understanding, comprehension of the issues, some involvement in those, the developments and the activities that are going in each of these committees. So if we consider that and maybe adopt that way of thinking as we name these appointees and their alternates, I think that might be the best. It
Sure.
gives the city of Solvang the best representation in these committees.
I don't disagree with that, but I know Mr. Fonte didn't want that situation, didn't want this position again.
You're not interested in SBCAG anymore? Wow.
No, they gave me a nice going away.
That was pretty clear.
I'm sorry, I had different information, so.
Well, perhaps then we consider the mayor pro tem to just be consistent in the roles, and that the mayor pro tem would then have a continuity of knowledge of those same issues and discussions and agenda items. Would that be agreeable? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So then do we have to make a motion for each committee or?
No, I
Okay.
would, you can go through and say for the record what what you all agree to for each appointment, and then you can make a motion at the end of that to appoint everyone, as stated on the record or something like that. So we don't have to do individual motions.
Okay, so it sounds like you two are agreeable, Mayor Brown, the SBCAG representative, and Claudia Rona, the alternate.
Alternate for
For
the
SBCAG.
Association of Government.
Yep.
SBCAG.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay.
And I would recommend the same thing for the APCD, because that meeting usually follows after the SBCAG meeting. So when you go to one, you can go to just
Okay.
sit there and wait for the next one, which is a half an hour later, sometimes an hour, but,
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So Brown is a representative and alternate is Claudia Arona,
Okay.
which she is now, according to this. So, okay.
I don't think I ever asked her to do it, so.
Okay, the next one is the JPIA, which is the insurance pool that we participate in. Is there anyone here that would like to be that representative? Now, keep in mind, there will be a District 3 person here at some time.
Somebody else we can stick in here? Yeah.
We could leave that open so we don't have to fill it right this moment. If it's kind of,
This is a
we can kick that one down the line to the new person if you're so inclined.
So this is a once-a-year meeting?
It's once a year voting. They have meetings pretty much at least quarterly. And those can be attended, but they're non-voting meetings. The meeting that they do have is in, basically it's near, it's City of Industry, not Industry, but the,
Commerce?
where's not very far, where's that city?
Oh, Buena Park?
Buena Park area, yeah, down that way. And they have, basically, it's about a 2-hour meeting, and they have their voting, and it's pretty simple. And all the communications are email. So if there's anybody that'd like to pursue that, I mean.
Are you declining?
Yeah, I am. My plate will be full.
It will be.
And, but like I said, for the new person, that's, to the extent you need something to accomplish, that's not a hard one. I'll grant you that, so. Anyway.
Why don't we save that then?
You want
It
to skip
seems like
that?
no
Do we
one's
want
raising their
to,
hand,
do we have
so-
an alternate? You were alternate at one time there, Claudia. You want to remain as an alternate for?
I'll remain if nobody else wants to take it.
Okay.
I'm alternate.
I
for-
can't, yeah, we can't expect the new person to do both. Okay. So we'll leave that
Open.
council member, the representative open and the alternate as Claudia Rona
Okay.
Okay.
for the time being. California League of California Cities. I'm open for that as well. We have Mayor Afonte, council member Afonte, as the representative, and our alternate is city manager.
And Randy
Murphy.
went to all of those anyway, so. He's the one, we should just put him in as the primary. Because he does all of that stuff with them.
You know,
My knowledge of that is, for some reason, I have yet to make it to any of those meetings that I recall, anyway.
Yeah, the council took action before the last league meeting a few months ago, and I believe you were appointed the representative, Mayor Brown, and I was the alternate. That's really, for that purpose, I think it's for anybody that's planning on going to the annual meeting to serve as a delegate.
Right.
And I intend, going forward to attend, but if any of you council, this next year is going to be in Long Beach again in October.
Well, I can tell you I was disappointed because
Right.
they didn't, they didn't get a quorum, even though we were, 20 people short of a
Right.
quorum. So there was no business done at that particular meeting, but, we can appoint Mr. Murphy as our representative and have an alternate. That's fine, too.
How much influence do we really get in that state legislative effort?
How much influence? Well, it's different. If you go to the annual meeting, what you'll be voting as a delegate as is more of how the organization is run itself. They have other meetings, usually in April, that are more about influencing the legislature. But any of us could attend them without being a delegate. This is more like, Cal City's business.
Right.
And I will say that a lot of the time, the meetings are held at the very last minute of the convention, and they're often adjourned as early as possible. So just giving some insight.
And we do have good local representation with Dave Melinex. He's our advisor for the, he's paid by California League of Cities. So, but he's also a good sounding board and a good information conduit. So I have anybody that, let's come to a conclusion here if we can. Anybody have a
Randy do it.
preference? He can be our representative. We still need an alternate. I'll step up and be the alternate for that.
I'm gonna go for the next couple with.
I'll be the alternate if you. and
Yeah, having the mayor would be
Yeah.
more influential at the Cal Cities.
I'll be the alternate for that then, if that's okay with the others. That satisfies the California League of Cities. Our next one is the Eastern Management Area Groundwater Sustainability, or EMA-GSA. Presently, who's done a yeoman's job, in my opinion, Representative Elizabeth Arona is our representative, and I've been the alternate.
I'd be happy to stay on. If
Oh, will you?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
But
And I will be happy to be the alternate.
Okay. Any
Yeah.
dissension?
Yeah, no.
I don't want you to feel like I'm not paying attention over
Yeah,
here.
no.
I'm not left-handed, but I'll look this way. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and then we have the Central Coast Community Energy. Ms. Claudia Rona is presently our representative, and our alternate is Mayor of Fonte, council member of Fonte. That's going to take some getting used to.
I know, it still says mayor on there, you know.
Yeah, it does say that, but
Yeah.
would you like to stay?
I would love to stay on that board, and
And I will be happy to be the alternate.
yeah, I'm gonna miss a particular council member telling me what a scam renewable energy is every time. but-
Yeah.
Mayor Brown.
Oh, yes.
Just for clarity's sake, this is a position that rotates between Buellton, Guadalupe, and the city of Solvang.
Okay.
We were assigned, I'm on the operations board as the city manager, and then the executive board rotates, is what the council sits on. So last year it was Solvang, this year it was Buellton. Next year is supposed to be Guadalupe. I got an email yesterday or day before or last week, city manager Scott Wolf, and he is asking Todd, the city manager of Guadalupe, if they're going to step up. They're typically rather detached from a lot of these organizations and agencies, so they may not opt to participate. I know they haven't in the past, or at least that's what I was told. So what I suggested to Scott was, I think for purposes of continuity, it makes more sense to do it 2 years in a row for a jurisdiction to 2 years, because you're really just getting up to speed, and then you're changing, and it makes more sense. So I've recommended to Buellton if they would be willing to do it again, assuming Guadalupe does not want to do it, then we would take it the year after that. So you're being, reason for all that explanation is obviously we need to assign somebody, but we may not actually need to do anything with that 3CE committee this year.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Mayor Julian, and they don't have the great facilities out there. That's a kind of an underprivileged community. And Ariston is a great guy, but
Well, I think
I can understand that.
I think we'll have the same representatives as we had this year, so there's the continuity that we hope for.
Yep.
Next is the Santa Barbara County Library Advisory Committee, and presently Elizabeth Arona is our representative on that, with no alternate, I see. Would you like to do that?
So
Yeah.
I'm happy to continue, but in all transparency, the meetings are once a quarter or every other month, and they happen Wednesdays from 10 to 12. So it's been tough for me to make the meetings that conflict with my work schedule. I haven't been able to be present for the last two meetings. So if there's somebody who would be interested in stepping up, I would be happy to continue, but if someone could be
Where
present.
are they held?
They're in Buellton, yeah,
Okay.
at the library there.
I'll be your alternate.
No, there is no alternate.
Well,
You're it.
Thank you,
Oh, man,
Mark.
and I get
You're-
stepped on that one.
You're
All right, I'm the representative for the Library Advisory Committee.
It's a great group.
And unless there's enthusiasm, we might leave it for the next person. District 3.
Whoever we appoint could take over a couple of
As
these.
an
sure.
alternate, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll see.
Unless somebody has a love for the library that wants to help Mark.
I gotta learn how to read.
So, any- Are you,
I'm happy to alternate, yeah.
Okay.
If you need.
we can
Yeah,
do, we can do that. Let's, thank you. So Claudia Rona will be our alternate for that committee. We have, has everybody kept notes, or do you want me
I
to
did.
repeat where everybody is?
Do we need to specify, or should we just say motion as stated or as agreed?
So I think we'll first just briefly ask if there's public comment, and then I'm happy to, I think both Ms. Porter and I were taking notes so we can read them off again, and then we'll do the motion like as staff, stated or something like that.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take any public comment that there might have. I don't have any slips. Anybody in the audience or on Zoom? I don't see any. Any further discussion? Okay, I will accept a motion on the committees.
I will motion that we accept the appointments as stated in our conversation.
I'll second. Oh,
And
do you need to read it off, or
if you would
can I
please
say?
read it off.
I certainly can for the record. And for the record, that would be a motion to appoint Mayor Brown as the SB-CAG representative with alternate Claudia Rona, Mayor Brown as the APCD representative with alternate Claudia Rona, the Cal JPIA representative will be reserved for the District 3 member with alternate Claudia Rona. Cal Cities representative is Mr. Murphy, the city manager with alternate Mayor Brown. The EMA GSA representative is Elizabeth Arona with alternate council member Infante. The Central Coast Community Energy representative is Claudia Rona with alternate Infante. And the Santa Barbara County Library Advisory Committee representative is Councilmember Infante with alternate Claudia Rona.
Thank you. Does that match the motion and how it's been
That
seconded?
matches the motion.
Both the motion and the second?
Yes.
Agree to that? Then let's have roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
We're done.
That's the extension part. And microphone. Is there anything else that we've, any closing comments by anyone? I have a couple of closing comments that I wanted to put in. I would like to wish all the residents and staff, our guests, a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, a successful and healthy and blessed New Year. And I would encourage everyone that is able to please volunteer and help us fill these vacant positions. With that, thank you to everybody here and our staff for a successful year. Thank you.
I'll
Thank
second that.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're adjourned at 9:03. Thank you.